Mongoose Jake here doing the video after I'm back at home, because I tried to do this at the trailhead and it was so busy with things, people coming and going, and they were even servicing the porta potties that were there at the trailhead. So here I am later after I've made it back home, and I want to go over these two bikes, the Mongoose Ledge and the Ozark Trail Slalom. As I had said, I've already put out a couple videos, them individually, and I said I would be comparing the two. Well, today I had a day off. Beautiful day here in early March, where it was hitting around 60 degrees and sunny. So it was a perfect trail riding day. And what I did was I loaded both bikes up in the truck, and I took the Ledge out first, rode it for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then did the exact same trails in the exact same order on the Slalom to get a good feel for how they compare on the exact same terrain. And even though, of course, with my name being Mongoose Jake, you know, I have at least a bias of some sort towards Mongoose. So I took it out first, get the bias out of the way, kind of. And it feels exactly as what you would expect. Cheap suspension performance. The frame was fairly solid. The trail system I rode has, you know, some features that you'll put it into the blue or even black at points. But most of it was, you know, about a third of it was green. Most of it was blue, though. And a little percentage was black trails. Meaning it did see a wide variety of everything. And between the fact that these bikes are very heavy, I mean, these are both pushing 40 pounds in stock form. But despite that, I should say, in spite of it, it felt lively. And the suspension, of course, was the letdown. I've already noted the flex on the fork. There is a lot. I've got it here in these little sunlight stands, but I'm going to actually squeeze this with my legs so you can see. Squeeze it. Now we're going to watch the orientation of the handlebar to the rest of the bike. The handlebar is moving. The wheel is not. And this is me doing this one-handed. So a lot of flex, and of course a lot of movement at the bushings. That squeak is you're hearing the tire against the stand. That actually made it feel less steady on the trail. I mean, you could feel that. And the wheels, I'm going to have to retension these. There's some spokes are pretty good, some are not. And it made it feel lively, but at the same time, not sure-footed. And of course, this generic pogo, it's a shock-looking thing. It had a whole lot of squeaks coming from the plastic bushings, and it pogoed like crazy, and I ended up just cranking the collar down to put more preload on it, and it helped eliminate the squeaks, and unfortunately, of course, that takes away some of the plushness. But that's what you expect from your typical big box bike. Cheap suspension. And this is exactly what it was. And unfortunately, you got exactly what you expected with it. The frame was fairly sturdy and rigid. And here's where I will do the typical, let's lean it over. And again, you're hearing the stand, but there is a little flex. If we zoom in here, a bit of flex, but not a huge amount, but there is a bit. And it does translate. You feel that. It doesn't feel like it corners on a rail. It feels like, especially when I got halfway up on a wall ride, you feel a little bit of just instead of a rail, more of a wet noodle. This isn't the worst. It's not that bad, really. It's not. The wheels, I think, were worse. I think that they actually need retensioned, especially the front. I was actually seeing wheel flop from flex while I climbed. But high notes, or we'll say good, bad, and ugly. Ugly is the suspension. The suspension performance is absolutely horrible. There's no excuses. There's nothing to say past that. I mean, I guess the Element suspension was plush over some little stuff, but it bottomed out hard. It topped out bad. The rear suspension with that shock looking thing just doesn't work well. And that's pretty much the only real true bad. The Falcon drivetrain was actually okay. I would call it reliable but clunky. I tried it with both right now you see that the clutch is off. And I tried it on the last part of the trail with the clutch off. Rode it some with it on. And it was fine. Clunky but reliable. It didn't miss a shift. It never dropped a chain. It was perfectly fine. The shifter, on the other hand, we've got a bad part. You'll see this is supposed to be a dual trigger setup. Supposed to be. It broke. Yeah, I can't ride the bike now. Until I get a new shifter. So there's that. And the brakes were actually perfectly fine. They were perfectly fine. On downhills, uphills, the pedals are alloy, and they were okay. They're very slippery. You can see this shiny painted surface. That was very slippery with my Lake MX flat pedal shoes. That's what I ride. I use Lake MX shoes, and they're 4 flat pedals. These were very slippery. That was bad. Overall, you'd give it like a 6 out of 10 at best in stock form. Maybe 5 out of 10 because the suspension lets it down. And it just feels like, I mean, remember, this retailed 2 years ago for $500. And it's on sale for $300 right now, but kind of what it feels like. You know, $300, $400, $500 big box bike. Moving on to the Ozark Trail Slalom. To the surprise of no one, this bike gave me a much better experience with a couple caveats. The pedals are trash. they're just the cheapest thing that they could throw on there. Hey, the sticker survived, but they were horrible for my Lake MXs. They were even worse than the alloy ones on the Ledge. And this seat is terrible. This seat's terrible. I found it to be horrific. And front caliper was sticky, but it eventually bedded in and stopped with the seizing, which is very good because I would have to replace it immediately if it kept seizing. And with the 180 rotor up front, it actually was a very solid performing, even though I was, for reference, I was actually maxed out speed-wise in 9th gear on the Shimano Qs on this. Which, by the way, Shimano Qs, that's a home run. That's a home run. Yes, some of the shifts, like from 3 to 2 and 2 to 1 and then back, those are they're a little of a kind of chunk of a shift, you'd say, like you'd expect. That's a big differential. And they are exactly what you expect. But it was smooth. And once you got used to it, it's like, oh, it dropped. It's not as bad as the change if you had used a 2x or a 3x crank, but it ended up being very consistent. You know, halfway through the couple hours of riding, this was very, very consistent. It seemed like it got better. Oh, the rear shock. The antithesis of the shock looking thing on the Ledge. This was smooth. I set the rebound, adjusted a little bit, ended up being, I went slight biased. I set it to the middle, and then I ended up turning it a little more to a faster rebound. And at that point, it worked so well. It stayed planted after jumps, but was lively enough to handle multiple routes in a quick succession. Oh, and also kudos to the cheapo Suntour. The Suntour XCM 30. It's just your basic Suntour with dual preload, but it was very smooth. And you can see I was using all of the travel. Because like I said, I was maxed out as fast as could be in 9th gear going downhill, catching air and landing. And there is no frame flex. There is no frame flex. This is much more like a a much higher quality bike, like high end. In summary and conclusion, I think I could sum it up best with a question my wife posed. She actually said, "What do you think of the two bikes riding them back to back?" And I said, well, the Ledge felt exactly as you'd expect. You know, I've bought big box bikes before. That's how I got my start. And I said it rode like a, you know, $400 or $500 bike or a little under. It wasn't bad, but it was exactly as I expected. And I said, and when I jumped on the slalom, I said it felt like I jumped on a $1,000 bike. And that's really the difference between 2 years of, or 3 years, whenever the Ledge came out. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Seems like all the reviews were from 2 or 3 years ago. And when it came out, of course, it was pretty groundbreaking. You know, it had a decent wheel set, came with a cassette, came with a clutched rear derailleur. And let's not forget, I mean, even just these seat posts, can't even take that for granted. That is an alloy, single bolt clamping style. How many times have we seen that it has the steel pinch style still on some cheap bikes? It came with all, you know, decent, solid things. But of course, me, first true hard trail riding day, I don't even know how I did it. I didn't hurt my finger or anything, but I bumped the shifter and the downshift, or the upshift it would be, yeah, upshift. It just snapped off. It just cleanly popped right off. And steel handlebars. I don't get it. Why? What are you doing? I haven't checked this, actually. I think this is alloy, but I haven't checked. But the steel handlebars don't belong on a $500 bike, which is surprisingly what that was. But again, the succinct summary of that felt like exactly what you'd expect out of a $300, $400, $500 bike. This felt like I'm riding a $1,000 entry-level full suspension. It felt like that. It felt like I rolled it out of a bike shop after paying $1,000, and it handled great. All the things that I said about the Mongoose not feeling like it was on a rail, I have rode slalom bikes on a slalom course before. And it kind of lived up to its name. It tracked like it was on a rail. Wall rides were really confidence inspiring. I went up higher, and I was, 6, 7 feet in the air on a wall, and it felt fine. Well, that might be exaggerated, but you get the point. I was up higher than I expected to go on this bike on the first time riding it on a true blue-black trail. And it felt at home. And that's a big deal. One felt like a inexpensive bike, and the other felt like a solid, capable, worth more than what I paid for it bike. And it's not the Mongoose. It's the Ozark Trail. We'll take a little bit more look, and I have a whole nother idea of what I want to do with these bikes. Because obviously, the Ozark Trail is better for the money. If you were comparing retail price to retail price, these retail for $498. That used to retail for $498. This was on sale introductory style, like for $448. This I only paid $301. So can I make the Ledge close the gap performance-wise for the amount of money I saved differential-wise, whether I say $150 or $200? Because in real money I paid, that was $150 less. However, that sale price versus that retail price would be $200. Give it the biggest benefit. So I already have a fork going, ready to go on. I have a shock going on. And of course that means headset has to be replaced. And we'll see what else. What else I can manage to squeeze in for the budget. And we'll see. Does my opinion change going forward with this? But as it is, it might be worth the $300 to you. Or it might be worth just stepping up to this. But I'll leave that for you. I already went long enough on this video. So till next time, this is Mongoose Jake saying thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this.